Little girls in holiday dresses always make me smile. As the mother of 2 adult sons, I'm so excited that both of them are currently engaged, and one day I may be able to make some of these beautiful dresses for a granddaughter of my own. In today's sewing tutorial, we'll walk through the construction steps of the pumpkin spice dress. This versatile dress features an overskirt, an underskirt with a ruffle, beautiful petal sleeves, and a nice round collar that looks perfect with the addition of a little bit of lace. Let's go ahead and get started. We have our pattern pieces laid out before us, which include the front of the dress and the back of the dress, the petal sleeve pieces, the collar, the overskirt, and the underskirt. The pumpkin spice pattern was created in collaboration with the Virtual Doll Convention, and the name was given to it for the upcoming November holiday of Thanksgiving. In today's construction, I'm going to switch from the November theme to December and make the dress out of this really adorable print with little tiny coffee cups on it. For the first sewing step, we'll grab the front bodice as well as the back and sew the 2 pieces together at the shoulder seams. With our shoulder seams open, we'll grab our sleeve pieces and create a narrow hem on all 4 pieces. My preferred method for doing this is to run a zigzag stitch and then do a small fold in and press it and then top stitch it. You will notice on the pattern pieces that you do have a notch indicating the center top of the sleeve. You're going to stack those one on top of the other to create the petal. You want to make sure you have a petal going each direction for the dress, and then you want to base those 2 pieces in place. With the front and the back sleeves sewn together, we'll grab our bodice and sew the sleeves into the armhole openings. With our sleeves installed, we'll check both sides, we'll clip and trim down that seam allowance, and we'll move on to constructing the collar. For the collar, you have a couple of different choices. You can actually construct the collar without adding any lace at all. You can add it to the inside of the collar, and then as you turn it, it becomes part of the edge of the collar. You can also do it where you add the lace underneath the collar and just hand stitch it in place. That's a really easy way to do it if you haven't had very much success or experience with sewing lace to the inside of a rounded edge. In this case, I think I'm going to just sew the collar straight, and then I'm going to add some rickrack to the exterior portion of the collar after I have it constructed. So I'm going to sew around the whole collar, leaving the neck edge open with right sides together. I'm going to clip in towards that seam allowance, turn the collar right side out, and give it a press. Now we'll apply the rickrack. With the rickrack sewn in place, we're going to go ahead and take some small clips in towards the curved edge of the collar. Then we'll place the collar right sides together to the bodice and get it sewn in place. When you're pinning the collar to the bodice, you want to leave 1/4 inch of bodice past the finished edge of the collar on each side. Let's get that basted in place. Next, we'll place the front and back sections together and sew the side seams. Off camera, I completed the lining to the bodice in the exact same steps I used to create the bodice, with the exception of zigzagging around the raw edge of the armhole opening and turning the lining edge or the waist edge up 1/4 of an inch and giving it a press. Next, we'll pin the lining with right sides together to the bodice, around the neck edge and down the left back opening. At the sewing machine, we'll sew around the neck edge with the lining side up and down that left back opening. A quick tip here in sewing the lining to the bodice is to make sure that as you go down the left back opening, you don't catch that collar in that back seam. You'll check both sides, trim and clip in towards that seam allowance, and turn the bodice right side out, then press the neckline. With the lining attached to the bodice, everything turned right side out and pressed, we'll turn our attention to the skirt pieces. We're going to grab our underskirt piece, we're going to grab our lace, and we're going to sew it to the hem edge. The way that I like to attach the lace to the underskirt is placing it right sides together to that edge, sewing it in place, pressing the seam allowance up, and then top stitching along that edge. With our underskirt prepared, we're going to grab our overskirt pieces, place the lining to the piece right sides together, sew down the front opening and along the hem edge on both pieces. With the two overskirt pieces constructed, instead of moving on right now, I think I'm going to go ahead and grab that rickrack again that we used around the collar of the bodice and apply it to the front of the overskirt. I think that will add a nice detail, and then we'll move on to the next step. With our trim applied to the overskirt, we're going to place it upon the underskirt, matching the centers. And then we're going to zigzag or serge the exterior portion or the raw edges of the right and left back opening together. At the sewing machine, we'll run 2 gathering stitches along the waist edge of the skirt assembly. You'll find the direct center of the bodice piece. You'll match up the center opening of the skirt assembly to that, pull the gathers equally to fit the waist edge of the bodice, and sew it in place. With the seam allowance pressed up, we'll actually zigzag or serge that right back opening. You can go ahead and pull out those gathering stitches that we used to create the gathers in the skirt. We'll grab a needle and thread and we'll hand finish the folded edge of the lining to that seam. Next, we'll place the dress right sides together and sew the center back seam from the hem edge to the dot as indicated on the pattern. So here's a quick fit of our project to our Anne doll, and it looks like everything's coming together really well. I think it's lining up really nicely at the waist and the back, as well as at the top by the collar. Our last few steps are to mark the placement for those snaps, get the snaps installed, choose a ribbon to add to the actual collar piece, and get those final photographs. As you can see from the final photographs, our project for Anne has turned out perfectly. Whether you want to sew Anne a new Thanksgiving dress or perhaps something for Christmas or maybe just a day of play, I hope you enjoy the pumpkin spice pattern. The pumpkin spice pattern was created in collaboration with the Virtual Doll Convention, Anne's Clubhouse subscription program. If you're interested in learning more about Anne's Clubhouse, I'll leave a link to the Virtual Doll Convention in the description below. Thank you guys so much for joining me in my sewing room today. If you have any questions about the construction of the pumpkin spice pattern, please list it in the comment section below. As always, I thank you guys for your time and for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.